The CPI report, Child Protection in Iowa, is brought to you by VOCAL, Victims of Child Abuse Laws. You can watch our program in Des Moines on Mediacom Channel 15. The programs air twice a week, one on Sunday at 1 o'clock p.m. and also Wednesday it's repeated at 9:30 p.m. And also we air this program in Council Bluffs, Omaha area on Cox Channel 23. It's aired every other Thursday at 4:30 p.m. You can email us at vocaliowa@mchsi.com. My number here in Des Moines is 515-276-3956. John's number is 515-282-2672. My name is Don Burgmaier, and with me at the controls is my co-host,
John Harvey, and welcome to the CPI report. Yes, we do attempt to assist people who are having difficulties with the Department of Human Services, and because of that, we have actually a twofold mission. One is to influence the issues with respect to child protection issues, and also working with people directly who are having difficulties with the department and with the juvenile court system. We're going to move very swiftly to a discussion about the court system, and we have a special guest who is coming in on our newsmaker line, and to introduce that guest and to interview him is our friend Terrance Walker.
Thanks again, John and Don. From time to time, we come across a lot of individuals on our show that have had some experience with the legal department, or legal system, I should say. And I am, just to introduce myself here, Terrance Walker, the self-proclaimed judge of the judges here in Iowa. And it is my duty, God-given duty, to bring to you every week what's going on with the judiciary here in the state and here in the United States. And I have ran across the individual here the past month who has had a great deal of experience with the court system, in particular, not including the civil side of things, but also the bankruptcy side of things. And I'm going to introduce this individual. His name is Morton Lapidus. He's wrote a book entitled The Rate of 2,500 Creditors by the United States Judicial System. And Mr. Lapidus, are you with us?
I'm here.
Okay. Can you tell us about this book, and why do you describe it as The Rape of 2,500 Creditors? It's a really interesting title for a book.
I am a volunteer with the Citizens Foundation for a Cancer-Free America. The Citizens Foundation put out this expose. I'm just a volunteer with the organization.
Okay.
I'm not the writer of the book. And the Citizens Foundation found that the cancer exists in the judicial system, at least in the Fourth Circuit, possibly worse than in the human body. They had expected donations of $80 million, and a faulty judicial system denied that amount. $75 million of that was to be donated to Johns Hopkins Hospital for research into the use of alternative and conventional medicine used together. Alternative medicine is used all over Europe. It has not become that popular in the United States as yet. But the National Institute of Health has donated $25 million to Johns Hopkins to study the use of alternative medicine, and the Citizens Foundation was going to increase that amount to make Johns Hopkins here in Baltimore the leading research institution in alternative medicine.
Okay. So, I mean, this was a...
Could you speak a little bit louder, please?
Yeah. So this was a... they basically took the money from the foundation, the judicial
No,
system?
the money was not taken for the foundation. It never got there.
Oh, okay.
Certain donations were prevented by various legal ramifications from they ever receiving it, along with the foundation, and the foundation is just one entity. A total of 2,484 entities and individuals lost $412 million by this rape of creditors. And the foundation attempted to understand why and how, but what it gets down to is lawyers that are paid by clients to win a case, regardless of what they have to do, including destroying documents, withholding documents, improperly influencing federal judges. And the results are that a lot of people that are senior citizens lost funds that they needed for their retirement. The foundation has taken the position that they're going to be the spokesman and hopefully arrange litigation on behalf of almost 2,500 entities and try to recoup everyone's loss. The foundation's expose is called, and let me repeat it, The Rape of 2,500 Creditors by the United States Judicial System. It's available for $10.95 in every bookstore in the United States. The publisher is iUniverse. So if someone wants it, all they have to do is go into a bookstore, and if the store doesn't have it in stock, they'll order it, and it's computerized, so they would have it in a couple days.
Okay. And I noticed that you listed a number of things that go on within the judicial and
I can hardly hear you.
I noticed that in the book that you list the writer of the book lists a number of different things that go on within the legal system.
Yes.
One of them was bias.
That's right.
One of them jealousy and envy, and influence, litigation, misuse of legal procedures, and
that resulted in a very damaged Fourth Circuit judiciary, and it resulted in a lot of people that were really not related to the various companies that were in litigation losing a lot of money. For example, in Idaho alone, 32 individuals, debenture holders, lost $157,554 right in your own home area.
Wow.
More was lost by Illinois residents. A couple companies in Illinois, because of the losses, were forced out of business that employed over 1,000 people. This information has been passed on to the new senator from Illinois, Barack Obama.
okay. And I noticed one of the interesting things that I noticed that you put in the jealousy and envy was that I never seen a perspective as such as was laid out in this book by the writer, that a lot of these, some of these judicial or judges or lawyers, or should I say judges for the most part, are basically envious and can be sometimes jealous of people that are self-made entrepreneurs.
That's correct.
And
the foundation sincerely believes it. It looks at many cases. It looks at some people that are selected and some to be indicted, and some people that are not. In the case of, for example, Tyco, he's been convicted. He was convicted of raping his company, but on the other hand, Jack Welch of General Electric, who is a hero, appeared to also be getting a lot of benefits from his company, which no one knew about until he got involved in a divorce.
wow.
I suppose the biggest problem is selection. Some people can be found guilty, and of the same crime, some others are not guilty. You take the case of even our President Bush that was involved in on the board of Harkin Oil. He sold his oil stock sitting on the board knowing that they were going to lose a lot of money and announce it. At the same time, nothing happened to him, yet others have been harmed. You have a case of one of his brothers that was involved in a big savings and loan default, and I think he paid a fine. But then you have Charles Keating, formerly of, I I guess he was from Illinois. I'm not sure. No, he was from Ohio, and he was running an outfit out of California, and he was indicted and convicted of the same thing that others were not even charged with.
So what
the law doesn't apply to everyone the same way.
So what you're saying is that a lot of times the judicial system is affected by not only what you know, but who you know.
Absolutely.
Okay, and you're thinking in this book, it's basically setting forth the case that the rape of these creditors was because they didn't have the proper influence.
That's correct.
Okay.
Or they were just small individuals that made small investments in companies and expected their funds to be returned, expected their interest to be collected, and never dreamed that something on a much larger scale would adversely affect them.
Now, how much total was involved here as far as the...
$412 million was lost by almost 2,500 people.
Wow.
I say, including Johns Hopkins Hospital that would have used the funds for cancer research.
And
of the 300 million people in the United States today, 1 out of every 3, 100 million people, have had cancer, have it right now, or will get it. And 500,000 of those people are going to die every year. And the funds being denied to research and prevent that was prevented by a faulty judicial system.
And how much did you say was affecting the people here in Iowa?
32 people in Iowa that we're aware of lost $157,554.
And this was at the hands of the federal courts?
At the hands of federal courts, yes.
Wow. Was this a bankruptcy court or was this some other court?
It was a bankruptcy court. It was also other courts.
Okay.
But it was a bankruptcy court. I think the real damage was caused by the bankruptcy court, where it was originally moved to a bankruptcy court.
Okay. And what did the appeals court say about it? Or did they get
the trustee in bankruptcy prevented the various companies from appealing it. In fact, in one case, a trustee in bankruptcy told an opposing counsel that he denied auctioning off a substantial lawsuit against a major bank because this is what the judge wanted him to do. There was a law firm from Oklahoma City that was willing to handle a $300 million suit against the bank on a completely contingent basis, including expenses. The plaintiffs wouldn't have had to put up a penny, and yet the judge allowed that lawsuit to be sold to the bank for $2,500, just a pittance. But that's what goes on.
I'm going to quote a little section of your book I think is kind of profound.
I can't hear you.
I said I was just going to quote a section from your book that sounds a little profound here, that some of the stuff that you brought out in this book I think is important. You talk about the trial of Martha Stewart, and you said that it can be referred to as part of the criminalization of America. You say that laws are passed that unknowingly will be violated. The rules and regulation under which United States citizens must live are increased. Jails are being filled, and new ones are being built to house a new brand of legislated criminals. If you are a minority, you are a candidate to be criminalized. If you are financially unable to defend a false charge, you are a candidate. If you have ever been in the public eye, you are a candidate. If you have ever had a successful career and your leadership in the community has been recognized, you are a candidate. Anyone could become an inmate in the growing American gulag. You could even unknowingly be placed on the dirty trick list of the FBI. And I thought that was kind of profound. So
there's now 2,200,000 people in United States jails, both state and federal. There's only 300 million people here. That's almost 1% of the population. And as Confucius once said many centuries ago, the more laws, the more criminals.
So you think this is all done on purpose?
Is it done on purpose? I think it's done without thinking all of the ramifications. For example, let's take I don't know Martha Stewart. I certainly know who she is and of her. And I bought her Christmas trees. I haven't bought her sheets.
Okay.
But she is a minority, a woman. A
Right.
lot of people were very jealous of her. And
Right.
she did not deny under oath not selling stock or selling stock. And the government spent a tremendous amount of money, but during that period of time, her stock went down substantially. And now the stock's back up again, but the people that sold the stock will never get their money back. So a lot of innocent bystanders were hurt. Yes, she went to jail. Probably she shouldn't have. It wasn't a serious matter, at least well, we don't consider that it was a serious matter.
Right.
And she certainly
Well,
doesn't belong
if I
in
remember
a category with the president of Tyco or Mr. Regas at Adelphia. But she got a hot tip on a stock and she took it. And it appears that, but we'll never know the complete truth. But the fact is, what she did was not that earth-shattering. Everybody that buys stock buys on a tip, or they think that they found the right thing, or they sell on a tip. And she was just Martha Stewart, and the rules were different from her.
Yeah, well, she was in the public eye, and she was a woman that was a billionaire. I think that's what set her apart, and that's why probably they
I
went
can
after
hardly
her.
hear you again.
I said that I think that she was a billionaire, and she was a woman, and she stood out, because she was in the public eye. I think she had a lot of things going against her on that.
Absolutely.
So, what do you think should happen here with the judiciary here in the United States?
I think that we badly need legal reform. The foundation is attempting to get both the Senate Judiciary and the House Judiciary Committee to look into the entire matter that is described in this expose. In fact, I point out that this expose is something that every cancer patient should read, every individual that believes that he or she was mistreated by the judiciary, and every retired senior citizen who's financially dependent on the funds that he's invested or she's invested should read this book. It tells what's going on.
Okay. And we're going to put up the address here. Are you able to order the address to the? Are we able to order the book from the address on the back of the book?
It can be bought from any bookstore.
Any bookstore. Also online at Cancer Free America.
Well, the publisher is iUniverse,
Okay.
and I believe you have a copy of it.
Yeah, we do. Can you put the back of the book on there so we can?
I don't know if it can be
There's
purchased
an address on there. The
online.
Citizens Foundation for Cancer Free America, P.O. Box. Is that 805 Arnold, Maryland 21012?
Yes, that's just the address of the foundation.
Okay.
If someone wanted to buy the book online, I guess they'd have to contact iUniverse at 2021 Pine Lake Road in Lincoln, Nebraska.
Okay.
Their web is www.iuniverse.com.
iUniverse.com.
And probably the book could be purchased online from iUniverse.
Okay, but not through the Cancer Free America website, right?
But again, I say it's available in every bookstore.
Every
bookstore in
has
the country
this?
can order it.
Okay. All right. Well, we definitely wish you success, and we'll be working with you as far as legal reform is concerned. And we appreciate you coming on the show, Mr. Lapidus.
And thank you for having me, and thank you for having interest in the foundation's work. The foundation started with physical cancer, and now they're trying to defend judicial cancer.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of that going on here, not only in the United States, but here in Iowa as well. So I feel your pain.
Well, it reached out and hurt 32 people in Iowa, so you know it's there.
Yeah, it's still affecting a lot more than that of us as well. But yeah, we appreciate you being on the show, and we'll probably have you on again.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, and you have a good one.
Okay, you too.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, any comments about Mr. Lapidus' interview?
Can you pick up your other mic?
Okay. Can you hear me?
No, can you pick up your other mic?
Yeah. Okay. All right. Any comments about the Mr. Lapidus'? I thought he was a very good guest on the show.
Yes, he certainly was.
Yeah. The profound quote in the book, I didn't really actually get to quote it until now. Um, he put this in, or actually not him, he didn't write the book, it was the foundation. Um, he
We're,
was
we're
talking
not getting your mic signal.
he was talking about the actions of the involved of in the rape of the 2,500 creditors by the judicial system in the United States, and he's quoted as saying or the book is quoted as saying, the type of actions described above were addressed on July 4th, 1776 in the Declaration of Independence in the 13 colonies. Namely, quote, whenever any form of government becomes destructive to these ends, it is the right of the people to alter or to abolish it and to institute a new government, unquote, or in this case, a new judiciary. And I quote, he quoted again, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. And the book goes on to state there's a structure when legislatures do not ignore a problem. It is the United States Senate and House of Representatives that can amend existing laws to constrain and correct the court system. And I think that, we have those similar structures here, not only in the United States, but we have them here in Iowa. We've got structures in place to prevent judicial tyranny, and that is the right to vote out judges here in the state of Iowa, which not too many states have. So again, like I say every week, we need to start voting out these Iowa judges, and maybe we'll see a change. Did you have any other comments, Don or John?
Not here.
Okay. That's all I had for
Okay.
this week. If you want to
Okay.
proceed to the next part of the show.
You bet. And if you have something, we may have some time later on if you have any follow-up
Okay.
on this subject. Thank you for putting that together. It isn't always that easy to include guests in our studio from, where was he, from Baltimore? Or up New England somewhere?
He was up in New England somewhere.
Okay.
Quest had a little, well, we can't blame Quest for the telephone problem there, but it tests our
Hey,
knowledge to get it on the air.
We've got to make do with what we got, and I think that it's commendable that you guys put a show together like that and have me on here, so that we can bring this sort of information that you don't hear on the mainstream media. So
the newspapers have been abuzz with child abuse problems that we've had here in Iowa because we're losing children. We're losing children, but we're paying more and more for the protection of children. How is it that you pour tons, literally millions of dollars into a protection system which loses children? Well, we heard, we're going to ask Don to select some editorials. We have quite a number of people who are talking about these various things. We won't read all of them, but we'll ask Don to sort down through and see if he can find ones that could be of interest. These are people who are simply commenting on what they know from the news as to what is happening in child protection in Iowa. Don?
There's 3 or 4 editorials put together here by different people. A child is harmed and fingers are pointed. When I heard that Evelyn Miller's home life had been reported a dozen times to the DHS, I was enraged. How many children have to die due to neglect and abuse in their homes before the state feels the situation warrants action on its part? The understaffed, overworked argument just doesn't cut it anymore. The child protective system in this country is broken. I'll agree to that. It's been broken for a long time. But as long as the taxpayer keeps pumping in money to the system, why, it'll keep limping along, I guess. Now that Evelyn is dead, they are reviewing her file, as if that will bring her back. Shame on all of you. You go through the motions, declare the allegations as unfounded, and move on until a child dies. Then scramble to place the blame. This is a national tragedy, and I see no reason to believe it will improve anytime soon. That is Joyce Cota from Harper's Ferry. She's right. Another one. I am shocked by the comments made by the Christie family regarding the neglect by the DHS in reference to Evelyn Miller. Quote unquote, DHS warned about Evelyn's safety. That was July 12th. What steps did their family take to protect the children, or the child? Where was the father? If he was aware of the neglect or danger, was he in court fighting for custody? It is easy for the grandparents to sit back and point fingers at the system and place blame. But what did they do? Nothing. Val Deadly in Des Moines said that. Another one. It irks me that people too quickly blame the DHS, i.e. the taxpayer, for the sorrowful disappearance and death of young children. Much of the responsibility belongs on parents for having raised children who become irresponsible adults and end up in poorly thought out marriages that don't last. They have live-in boyfriends with unsavory pasts who associate with unsavory people and bring people into the middle of it all. If parents were doing their job, there would not be the need for a humongous, overwhelmed social safety net that is in place today. That was Robert Wimmer from Montezuma. Another one says, whose job to protect children? Ours. Another small child in Iowa murdered. I struggle with the media's and lawmakers' attention to these occasional isolated murders and wonder where all of us are when these powerless, voiceless children are soul murdered on a daily basis in every mid-sized Iowa town. Children are physically, sexually abused and neglected daily. Family members, educators, and community members report their suspicions and concerns, yet sometimes little is done to protect our children. Understaffed and underpaid and burnt-out caseworkers who are many times unable to assist these children because the evidence is just not concrete enough to send the children home to endure such yet another evening of boundary violations. I can already hear the outcry by lawmakers and the general public calling for the death penalty for the perpetrators who kidnap and kill children. Sadly, the vast majority of perpetrators are family members. During 2003, approximately 906,000 children were determined to be victims of child abuse or neglect throughout the United States. Now, my opinion there is that statistic is way too high, but I'm not here to say that there's no abuse out there either. He goes on. More than 60% of child victims were neglected by their parents or other caregivers. Almost 20% were physically abused, 10% were sexually abused, and 5% were emotionally maltreated. For 2003, an estimated 1,500 children died due to child abuse or neglect. Approximately 80% of perpetrators were parents. Whose job is it to protect those vulnerable members of our society? The DHS. Not hardly. It is our responsibility. Responsibility lies first with the leaders of the state who prioritize the government agency. Agenda. Prioritize the government agenda. Manage the budget and create the laws. If they fail to adequately fund the services and protect children, then fault also lies with each of us who allow lawmakers to prioritize smooth roads, river walks, and arenas over the well-being of children. And then some people talk about the hog smell in northern Iowa and all around Iowa too. That takes priority in the legislature at times, but not the children. Doesn't seem like it. Or maybe it takes too much priority at times. When politicians want to review the Iowa DHS case to determine if the agency failed Evelyn Miller, then we also need to review the politicians' decisions to see if they failed the agency that was created to protect her. That was signed by David Krotz from Grinnell, Iowa. John?
Okay. Some time ago they put together something called. This was a redo of the entire, a redesign they call it, of the entire child protection system in Iowa. They have to come up with some major reorganization about every 4 or 5 years to cover up the mistakes in the prior, and saying, well, we can do better. We always do a good job, but we can always do better. And so they'll go to the legislature and ask for tons and tons and tons of new money to redesign, to reevaluate, to redo these things. And the most recent one of the redesign took a tremendous amount of work and effort on the part of the DHS administration. They traveled all over the state. They held meetings. They did all kinds of things in order to justify a huge a reordering of the entire system, a redo of the system. So it costs taxpayers up into the millions of dollars to make this last change. The last change has a kind of a key note about it. It's called Better Results for Kids. Are we getting better results for kids? I think not. Let's take a look at this. Better results for kids. This tombstone says Jetsetta Gage. Jetsetta Gage, age 10, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, was found dead in an abandoned trailer house in Johnson County, a victim of child abuse. Shelby Dewis was found dead in Dickinson County, Spirit Lake, Iowa. She was found dead in her bed. She was just a little toddler. She was in dirty, very dirty diapers that appeared not to have been changed for quite some time. And she was in her pajamas, found dead. They can't even identify her murderer. Evelyn Miller was found floating in the Cedar River in Floyd, Iowa. Now, these 3 Iowa children have been lost to the system. Logan Marr was found dead, taped to a high chair in the basement of the home of a former foster mother who didn't like to hear her making noises. So she taped her mouth shut, and she later was found dead of asphyxiation. Now, all of these children were wards of the same gentleman who now heads the Department of Human Services.
In what state?
And he headed the Department of Human Services in the state of Maine, Kevin Kincannon, and now he heads the Department of Human Services in the state of Iowa.
Are you serious, John?
I'm serious that this is the man who was in charge of protecting these children, but apparently, of course, they say the children fell through the cracks. Well, the cracks are in the system, and I think the way the system is handled. I'm not sure that we should blame DHS, because DHS is so disorganized. Their agenda has nothing to do with protection, the way they operate, and they waste millions and millions of dollars telling us that they're protecting children, but this is a good example of the children they have failed to protect. Now, they can't be guardian angels, obviously, of every child in the state of Maine and every child in the state of Iowa. we do have some responsibility to point fingers at those who do have the authority to protect their children. And in this case, there's been a number of areas where that protection has not come forth appropriately, in my opinion. If mom is working day and night, and the children are left to run or left with an 11-year-old to babysit, or with an infirmed grandparent to babysit, I don't believe that is appropriate protection for children. We knew in the Jetsetta case, or the mother knew, the nature of the men that were hanging around her home. And I'm not sure that she exercised the greatest amount of care in that situation. We know a little boy who died of drowning, whose mother may not have exercised the greatest amount of care in permitting him to swim in a flood-swollen creek. Now, who should we point fingers at? This is not accusatory. This is simply inquiry. Inquiry doesn't have to be accusatory. Inquiry can be educational in nature, to ask the question, who was responsible? Who did their job and who failed to do their job? In the case of the little 8-year-old boy, we know that father doesn't fail to do his job, but yet he was denied custody of the children. Those children were placed in the care of someone else. So these are problems, I think, that could be solved by DHS if they used a little wisdom. But I don't think that wisdom is one of the attributes in the halls of the Department of Human Services. It's a strange situation that we have to go through when we see our children being separated from their parents, taken away in some cases where they should not be taken away, and then placed back in the homes in some situations where they should never be placed back in the homes. In all too many cases, they are placed in foster care and then adopted. And as Terrance has told us, he's run through a number of these cases in the Iowa Supreme Court, in which it seems as though once the case is decided for termination of parental rights, it is not overturned.
It is rubber stamped.
It is rubber stamped by
I think there was an interesting tidbit that was relayed to myself. I think I forwarded it to you guys. Gentleman was citing some statistics from
Louder.
Illinois. Illinois has a policy of basically allowing the kids to preferably be put into alternative placement rather than with a relative. I mean, this is something that goes on here in Iowa to a similar extent, and allowing the judge to basically have the discretion to put the child with the relative or not. I think that this should be a primary consideration, being as how a relative is going to be someone that the child is familiar with.
Right.
And why would you want to break all the family ties and basically make that child start over from scratch as far as developing bonds with people? I think it will be totally devastating. I don't think that anybody in those positions would want to uproot from all of their bonds for all the people that they know and go start anew and with nobody that they know around them and have to start from scratch. So, why would you want to go ahead and make a child do that? I don't think that that's in the best interest of the child. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
Quite often, these placement decisions are totally irrational, and I think that social workers and their and their supervisors must play these games with glee, and being able to affect the placement decisions by the courts. And in some cases, they actually get in and tell mother, no, you don't let father see the child, even though the court order for divorce says that he gets to see the child, but the social worker supersedes the courts. So even though your decree says you get to see the child every other weekend and Father's Day and so forth, and the social worker says no, that isn't the way we're going to do it. You're not going to see the child until you take your drug test or until you do this or you do that. And of course, you don't have to be on drugs or ever having used drugs for them to accuse you of using drugs and making you go through a drug treatment program. Well, that is the new scheme, and I never saw that in the public documents for this scheme called Better Results for Kids. But apparently, they're doing a lot of those kinds of things nowadays that I never noticed was happening before. For some reason, we're getting interference on your wireless mic. Okay. Oh, much better. Much better. Okay. Thank you. We have one wireless mic in the studio, and it's sometimes causes a little audio difficulty. Back to this business of the new assignment for the social worker. It seems as though they have been given a brand new script, and the script says you do anything you want to. You can tell these parents anything you want to, and we'll back you up on it. In the case of Evelyn Miller, the social workers should have felt free to do about anything they wanted to up there, because there is a judge in that second judicial district who has been said to have told workers up there, you do what you please, and I'll back you up with the paperwork in the morning. So what he's basically done is turn the judicial reins over to the social workers. So there's no excuse for a social worker not to do whatever is necessary to save little Evelyn Miller. And there is one thing that I have to compliment the workers up there in that general area, is they've kept their mouth shut about the facts of the case, about the autopsy and about other details of the case. Sometimes this becomes a spectacle, and we get all kinds of rumors. In this case, they've been wise enough not to release that information. On the other hand, it's about time that the department begin releasing information about what their responsibility was in the Miller case. The child has no confidentiality rights anymore because the child is deceased. So they don't have to abide by the confidentiality rules. It would seem like to me it would be better off for them to look at what the public should know. There is a lady in Vocal who watches over nationwide of some of the things that are happening, and she makes comments from time to time on the computer, on the internet, and I'm glad that she does, because they're very instructive. There are some things that should make our blood boil when we look at how the departments around the nation are handling their abuse situation. She says the child abuse hysteria has done more harm to child protection than it has helped. Children are separated from family members to live with their childhood drifting from foster home to foster home. And I've seen, it's nothing to put children into 18 different foster homes. How in the world could you expect any kind of stability from a child who has been moved that many times? Even an adult would get shook up by being moved 18 times. While true sexual abuse of children is horrific, so are the other forms of child abuse. Severe neglect, for an example, is not only threatens the health of the child in some cases for life, but often ends in death. Yet one need only call in a suspected case of severe child neglect and no one investigates until there are 3 or 4 more reports. Report of suspected touching of a 3-year-old's breast and the SWAT team is called out. The response to reported cases is still scattershot and ineffective. This applies to both true cases of abuse or false. So are they doing the children any good by passing all of these silly, useless laws that are expensive to operate, to make them function, instead of looking at other ways of protecting children? No, they wanted to go to the crash bang, shoot them up, cuff them and stuff them type of mentality, and they think that that's going to protect children. It certainly didn't protect these children, and none of the laws that I've seen in 619
Iowa Code?
no, it isn't. That isn't Iowa Code. That's Iowa Legislature that passed House File 619. It'll go into Iowa Code, and in fact, it did July the 1st. It also goes to into the Iowa budget at $5.3 million per year to make that particular section of code function.
Was that the DNA provisions for the felons?
That's correct. That includes DNA provisions for felons. That was something that was brewed up in Tom Miller's office, the Attorney General, and I said there's so much brewing going on up there, they should take down the sign that says the Department of Justice and put up the sign that says Miller Brewing. In many cases, the crush cause is never addressed. For instance, in one molest case at the firm where I worked, a stepfather was humiliated repeatedly by his wife. She even had sex with another man in front of him, telling him he was worthless. She began to gravitate to his teenage stepdaughter, who, by the way, looked just like her mother. He molested her. He molested. We're losing your. Hello. I thought we lost Mike entirely there. Okay. He molested her, and he began to gravitate toward the teenage stepdaughter, who, by the way, looked just like her mother, and he molested her. And after some time, the daughter reported it, as she should. He was arrested and facing trial. He wept, saying that he had fallen in love with his stepdaughter and that she reciprocated his advances for several months, that she had lured him. We told him the law is the law. The law is explicit. It didn't matter if she lured him into her bed. He was the adult, and she was legally the child. No excuses. Prison is the outcome. The law firm did attempt to get him into some mental health counseling in a diversion program, no prison but intensive probation with therapy. But because he was the stepfather and not the father, he was turned down. Now, you see, the law should deal with him the same, shouldn't he? Simply because he was a stepfather, not the father. Well, the day of trial arrived, and our client didn't show. A bailiff was sent to his home to get him and found him with a gaping hole in his chest from a shotgun. Questions remain. Did the man qualify as a pedophile? We didn't think so. He had never gravitated to children ever before in his life. His teenage stepdaughter was a 30-year-old in a 20-year-old body, and the tender age of 13. Still, her participation in the affair was not her fault. She was still a child. He was the adult, a broken adult, a defeated man seeking comfort in a forbidden form. The variables in child abuse cases are huge, and many gray areas exist. Witch Hunt, which is the network that I watch on the computer, was started primarily because of those false accused cases where no crime was committed, only false allegations that result in wrongful imprisonment. Many of those individuals still live behind prison walls, lest we forget. However, the more we examine true child abuse, the law and society's response, the better we can seek to avoid the errors of the past. We'll turn in just a moment to another story written by the same person who is associated with VOCAL, Victims of Child Abuse Laws. But I wanted to make mention of one thing that we're doing here in Iowa called the Megan Registry. We refer to it as the Megan Registry. It's actually developed before the Megan case arose, but it's been operating for over 10 years here in Iowa. It was developed in 73, I believe, and as such, the Megan Registry now has something like 6,000 registrants. This is a sad situation, in my opinion, that we should have that kind of a situation where people who haven't even engaged in sexual abuse can be placed on the sex offenders registry. And now they're going after them big time for this kind of a situation. Well, Don, let's take a look at the other story that Leslie wrote for us. Don?
Yet another prime example of how the child protection system doesn't work. Then compare this to the guy that keeps lists with the details of his sexual conquests with children. Why did he keep on going? Was it because he confessed and the system was softer with him? So he was free and ran evading registration? Moving from town to town, state to state, victim to victim. The madness of the system is this. Confess and we'll get you help. And you'll be registered in a low-risk category. Stand firm on your innocence. Now this is another twist. Stand firm on your innocence, once accused, and you'll pay big time. Some people are in prison for life, even though they're innocent. And they'll say to the person, just admit guilt, and we'll let you go. Well, how can you admit guilt when there was no guilt? She goes on to say, both monetarily and for the rest of your life. There is no accommodation for the innocent or the slip into madness, the guy who shot himself. Then there was the case of the 17-year-old who was accused by a 14-year-old. He was tried in juvenile court. Admit and we'll give you probation, they said. What they didn't tell him was he would have to go to therapy where he has to admit sexually abusing a child. The child was a 32-year-old in a 13-year-old body. She went after him, and he stupidly complied. Now his life is ruined. Then there was a stepdad who caught his teenage 13-year-old in bed having sex with the neighbor kid. He reprimanded her for it and grounded her big time. She went to school and got even. Said stepdad had sex with her. Her medical examination showed recent penetration. He now sits in Pelican Bay prison on suicide watch. Doesn't this injustice just make you burn? My comment, what would you do if you were the parent trying to keep your child in line and you ended up in prison for life?
Okay, thank you, Don. Another story that we won't have time to complete, Don, but I'd like for you to take a look at one that from Marshall County that appeared in the Des Moines Register, written by Frank Santiago. This is going to be an interesting one that arises from the new law just past July the 1st. Don?
Arrest made may be first for sex offender law. This is July 23rd, 2005. A Marshall County man and woman who have been arrested under a new state law that makes it illegal for a state offender to live with single women who have children at home. Officials said Dale R. Baker Jr., 28, and Darrell Joe Owen, 37, might be the first in the state charged under the law, which went into effect July 1st. They are charged with child endangerment. The law is intended to prevent mothers from bringing sex offenders into the home where there are children, Marshall County Attorney Jennifer Miller said Friday. Baker, who is on the Iowa Sex Offender Registry for the 1999 third-degree sexual abuse of a Marshall County girl between the ages of 14 and 17, was in jail Friday on a $13,000 bond. Owen has been released under court supervision. Marshall County Sheriff Ted Camatus said Baker had lived with Owen in July. He said there were 2 preteen children in the home who had since been turned over to a relative. The sheriff said investigators were led to the home on a tip but didn't identify the source. Baker and Owen each face 2 years in prison and a fine of up to $5,000 if convicted. The charges against them stem from a package of get-tough measures aimed at sex offenders that were driven by the March sexual abuse and slaying of 10-year-old Jessica
Jetsetta
Gage of Cedar Rapids. A family friend and registered sex offender who lived in another city is charged with that crime. Governor Tom Vilsack last month signed a law that, among other measures, allows for life prison terms for people convicted for a second time of a major sex offense and doubles the prison term to 10 years for certain sex crimes against children. There is a mounting frustration among Iowans with children suffering from abuse, Representative Danny Carroll from Grinnell said Friday. They are expecting something to be done. This is an effort, probably a modest effort, to protect children. Opponents contend that live-in boyfriends are leading contributors.
No, that's proponents, not opponents.
Oh, you're right.
They're the ones that are backing it.
Proponents contend that live-in boyfriends are a leading contributor to violence against children in the home. Randall Wilson, legal director of the Iowa Civil Liberties Union, argued Friday that the legislation is flawed. We should be cautious here because we could be breaking up families, he said. Not everyone on the sex offender registry is a danger to young children. If it was confined to pedophiles, I don't think anybody would have a problem with that, but the law goes too far. Des Moines Police Sergeant Barry Arnold, supervisor of a trauma unit that deals with child abuse, sex abuse, said the law puts women on notice that they have to be more diligent to protect their children. John?
Okay, and he says it's 90% of the situations are like this, where it's a live-in boyfriend. I'd like to see the study that yields that statistic. I don't think he has a study. I think he just has statistics.